Welcome to a special edition of Hoopsville from Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm Dave McHugh, joined by D3Hoops.com's Gordon Mann. Obviously here after the championship in Division III, which saw the Saints of Thomas More defeat the Jumbos of Tufts for the second year in a row. Obviously semifinal last time, but somewhat strange, interestingly, same score in that one. And obviously a big opportunity here for Division III. We'll have plenty more coming up on the show. We'll hear from Sydney Moss. We'll hear from Jeff Hands. Also some others, but Gordon's joining me now. And first and foremost, let's just talk about the fact that they played the championship in front of more than 6,000 people.
Right.
And in front of UConn's team at least. I don't know if Syracuse's team was here or not. At least, following a D2 championship with all the pomp and circumstance that came with it, the lighting, the pump-up videos. They really had a great experience here.
Yeah, really, I mean, much like Dave, when you and I were in Atlanta for the championship, just an atmosphere you can't replicate.
No.
In any other way. You had UConn's pep band came and wore
represented Tufts.
Yeah, wore Tufts t-shirts, played the Tufts fight song very well. You had a big crowd here. The lower bowl here at Bankers Life Arena was more or less full.
Yeah.
You had the UConn women's team here for at least the first half, and some of the players I know Rebecca Lobo and a couple of the other players hung out till the bitter end. Just a wonderful atmosphere. It's a special moment. The first thing somebody said to me when I walked in here was the head coach from Haverford, Bobby Morgan. She said, "We should do this every year."
Yeah,
and
I remember hearing that sentiment from the men's side.
And Carla, Carla Berube, head coach at Tufts, the very first thing she said when she got up on the podium was, "We should do this every year." And then one of the last questions to Coach Hands from Thomas More was, "What'd you think of doing it all together?" And they said, "Did you like it or not?" And he said, "I loved it." So, this isn't at all a slant to Grand Rapids, Rochester, Minnesota, all the other cities that have done this. It's just this is a once in a lifetime type of thing. Well, maybe, but a special atmosphere that you can't duplicate without being, a facility like this.
Yeah, it was certainly a great atmosphere, and really, to be honest with you, a great game.
Yeah.
Back and forth, Tufts. I said to you late in the game, I tweeted it out. It was Tufts controlling the score.
Right.
But Thomas More was controlling the pace a little bit.
Yep.
Sure, they weren't scoring 90 points on that pace, but they were definitely wearing Jumbos out by the end. But early on, Thomas More came out kind of nervous, and the Jumbos took it at him.
Yeah, we were right behind Thomas More's bench and heard Coach Hands, the things that we could repeat at least.
Yes, exactly.
He said, "They look tougher than you, and you look afraid," and it was more or less what he said to them. I thought Thomas More's defense was really spectacular. Some of that is the Tufts offense. Tufts is not.
They're methodical.
Tufts is not going to come out and score 90 points on anybody. But Thomas More's defense was really good, and where you particularly saw the defense make a difference was the Tufts players were just gassed at the end.
Yeah.
They fought all the way back. It was 49-49. They had the emotional energy. They had the lift. They had 2 weeks off ahead of time. They had all that. But much actually like the D2 game, none of their baskets were easy.
No.
Everything was hard. Everything was a putback or a contested jumper. And I think at the end, once Thomas More got a little spurt, they got the steal and the basket by Moss.
After the final media timeout.
That pretty much sucked the life out of Tufts, and they just looked tired. Shots that they would make 9 times out of 10, they just weren't. They weren't able to finish.
Yeah, it was really interesting to watch. You're right. The other thing that was interesting to watch too was just how the ebb and the flow of the game. You saw the Jumbos come out and really attack.
Yeah.
Attack. They were driving the rim, hitting shots, and you saw Thomas More back on their heels. Then Thomas More got up on its toes, and you saw the Jumbos back on their heels. And that kind of went back and forth a lot of the game. And I thought, well played. Yeah, you have your turnovers, and every game does, but it was a hard-fought game.
Yeah.
You were at the semifinal last year. How close in resemblance was it to that game? And score-wise, it was eerily.
Yeah, I asked Coach Berube that in the post-game. I said, how was this game different since the scores were so similar? And she said that she thought they played better offensively this game. They took better care of the ball in this game. And that one, Sydney Moss was a little more aggressive offensively. Nikki Kiernan was more or less a non-factor in the game last year. Tonight she played very well. Madison Temple was in high school last year. Tonight she hit a big three. So there were differences. Melissa Baptista was not a significant part of and it didn't end up being a significant part of either game, but was not on the roster last year. So the teams were a little different, but I thought overall style of play was actually fairly similar. I think that's just in a way that's sort of Tufts basketball.
Yeah.
You read through the scores that they've
right.
played people. They beat Albright by a similar score. They beat Scranton by a similar score. It's a testament to Thomas More that they can play at any pace you want to play at. I'm sure they prefer the 92 points per game pace. But I actually thought there were a lot of similarities between the two games. I guess if I had to boil it down to one thing, Abby Owings and Nikki Kiernan tonight played like they were a year older than they played last year against Tufts.
Interesting. Let's go with Tufts. You brought up Baptista. 4 fouls midway through the third quarter. Has to park. Lee's also got 4 fouls.
Yeah.
Carla finally brings Baptista in, and I thought a good point to maybe get a spark. They were kind of on a little bit of a run there, though. Was it
Folliard, yeah.
Folliard had certainly played maybe above expectations.
Yeah.
Baptista misses a layup and hits her fifth foul in 19 seconds.
It was a couple of things. I think Melissa was overeager. I think you sit on the bench, you watch your team come all the way back, you so badly want to be a part of it. She got out there, they went right to her. The position was designed for her. She was posting up. She went, excellent Thomas More defense. She was double or triple teamed, did not get a good shot off, and then missed and fouled. That's been a little bit of an issue for Melissa throughout the season. They've talked about that in the. She had 4 fouls and sat early against Albright. She had 4 fouls and sat early against Scranton. She didn't get into foul trouble against Wartburg, but she did tonight. It's something she's going to have to work on. She's just a sophomore. Everybody on Tufts, with the exception of Roberson and a couple other players, are back. Where it really hurt Tufts was Baptista needed to be a difference maker tonight. Because North's a great player. You know what you're going to get from her. She's a 6'3" or 4" post. The guards are effective in their own way. Baptista is that one. I'm not putting her at Sydney Moss's level, but she's long, she's tall, she can play forward, she can play guard. I thought that she would actually draw Sydney in an assignment because some of the things that Amherst had trouble with, Melissa wouldn't be able to be pushed out of the way like some of the Amherst guards were, but she got in foul trouble and never really was able to be a factor really in any way tonight.
Well, and Tufts ended up with 3 players fouling out of the game, which I think was another factor. It forced Carla deeper into her bench and into different matchups.
And Folliard and Wu played well. I mean,
let's be honest, they played out of their minds.
Yeah, I mean, they both played well. Folliard's a jump shooter who shot well. Wu's an energy player who scored, I think that was her second highest total of the year. I was looking at it as soon as she had 6 points in 10 minutes. So, the Tufts players picked up for the fact that, they didn't hit a lot of threes. They're not a huge three-point shooting team. But I thought, the Thomas More defense was just really, really good. Kiernan, Katie, Huber, Moss and spots. There was a point in the game where Thomas More had to go small. So they dropped Moss down to the 4. She covered either Baptista or North, whoever was in the post, and that enabled them to spread out the offense a little bit and enabled them to get more spacing because, Kiernan's a good player, but she's probably not going to draw an immediate double team. Moss, as soon as you give it to her in the post, particularly given what Moss did against Amherst, where she just ran through them in the low post, I'm sure Tufts and Coach Berube had seen that and thought, as soon as she touches, we have to double. And they were doubling, they were tripling, and Moss was kicking out, and Temple and Owings and a bunch of other players were hitting their shots.
No, Owings certainly had a good game switching, and thanks for the transition to Thomas More, because that's kind of where I wanted to go. Sydney Moss had a good game, but Owings started off timid and then exploded. You mentioned Kiernan hit some big shots. They had Santa Maria, who hit a couple big shots, got some big rebounds as well. You had a lot of different players step up. We've been saying for years, this is not the Sydney Moss show. In the championship game, they showed this is not the Sydney Moss show. It was 4 players in double figures.
Yeah, I'm sure if I sent the second half box score to head coach GP Gramacki of Amherst from last week for Sydney Moss, he would say, I'd definitely take that performance. 2 weeks ago, Sydney had 29 points in the second half. Tonight, she had 4. I'm sorry, she had 3. She had 3 points in the second half. One was obviously on a free throw, and the other was on a layup where somebody else made the play happen. She just happened to be the last one down the floor to score, and that was it. And that's not to say Sydney didn't have an impact tonight. I mentioned the post defense. She distributes from the wing.
She clearly was looking to distribute in the second half.
I don't know if she was, maybe in the back of her mind kind of chasing that second triple-double, saying, I'll get to the double on the other 2. Let me see if I can do it for assists. I'm just kidding. But I thought, Owings and Kiernan played really well. Not that this was at all in the back of their mind, but they made their case to be number 1 again next year, even when Moss graduates. I thought Owings was the best player on the floor. And that's
valid point.
very different from 2 weeks ago when Owings was frustrated by Amherst. It's always nice to have that backup plan where, you wonder if Owings doesn't get off and Moss has to score 30. Would she have? She didn't need to tonight.
She didn't need to. Yeah, we joked actually. It would have been funny if she had just all of a sudden opened up and scored 50.
Yeah, and in the last 5 minutes.
Goodbye, everybody.
Right.
Walked
Exactly.
off the court.
Yeah.
Which she's certainly capable of. But I thought it was a really well game. Obviously, we had 2 weeks to prepare.
Yep.
These two teams
that
are
made a big
unfamiliar
difference.
with each other.
Yep, that made a big difference.
So certainly that had some role in it. But outside of the title game for D1 that we will have not seen it when we're talking yet.
Yeah.
This is probably the best game we've seen in this building in this weekend.
Well, certainly better than the 2 Division I semifinals, which were both blowouts.
Division II got close, but
Division II got
more
close.
Of an arm reach game.
Yeah. Lubbock Christian there led Alaska Anchorage.
Yeah.
I don't know when we'll ever get them in a report
we'll
again.
Never really talk about that.
But yeah, tonight, particularly because Tufts got even, and you could feel the tension rise in the building and the excitement. It was a well-played game. Both teams acquitted themselves very well in a even despite the fact that they had 2 weeks off in a obviously the biggest arena any of them will play in. I thought they both acquitted themselves well.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, I'll talk to Sydney Moss, Jeff Hands, even talk to Justin Sweeney, and just get his take, obviously knowing the team pretty well. On the flip side, though, Gordon will come back at the end. We'll talk about the atmosphere. We'll talk about the season. We'll talk about looking a little bit ahead to next season, though I know him and I don't want to look too far ahead. We would like to take a break. But we'll come back with plenty more. You're watching a special edition of Hoopsville from Indianapolis. Back with more right after this.
For the love of the game. That's what it's all about, they say. But for those of us who are Division III student athletes, it's more than that.
It's more about team and the schools and communities we represent.
And for the many of us blessed with the strength to compete in sport at the college level, we understand that with what we were given comes a special obligation.
Our obligation to help those who have their own special needs and whose love for the game is no less intense.
That is why NCAA Division III teamed up with Special Olympics. Since August of 2011, we and others from Division III campus communities have volunteered more than 250,000 hours, time away from the classroom and practice field, reaching across the country to coach and mentor Special Olympics athletes.
And to learn that in giving, we receive so much more in return. Help us keep that dream alive.
Be part of it.
Get involved.
You can make a difference.
I used to never really talk. Ever. I was afraid if I said something wrong, everyone would laugh at me. But then I started to play golf with Special Olympics. It helped me to find my voice. And now everyone else is speechless.
Welcome back to the Hoopsville special here from Indianapolis. I'm now joined by Sydney Moss, obviously pretty important player for Thomas More, but her whole team is. I want to get a little idea from her, but after a national championship. First and foremost, congratulations, back-to-back championships. I know that was the goal.
Yeah.
What's it feel like to now actually have gotten it done?
It feels amazing, to go out there and get the win, the last one of college career, and then also, the last one in a Thomas More uniform and playing with the girls that, you spend every day with.
How hard, I'm very curious, how hard is it in a game like this when you know you can easily score 30, 40 some odd points to not go out there in your last game and just do that?
I think I ended, 4 for 14, and,
yeah.
My shots were right there, they just weren't falling,
Yeah.
and I just knew that I needed to get, my teammates involved and, not letting the defense just shut me down, but also having to guard everybody else, so.
Yeah.
From a defense of, playing offense, but against, a defense, I try to get everybody involved and, where they have to stop the whole team and not just me.
It's interesting. You almost had different parts throughout the game kind of working. At one point, you had your shots falling. Abby started a little cold, then kind of warmed up, and then caught fire. And we can go through the roster. Somebody at some point at every facet of this game stepped up. A lot of people have talked about how this is a Sydney Moss show. You guys really have shown it's not. It's really a team for you guys.
Yeah, I think we showed that at the beginning, me sitting out the first 5 games and them still getting wins, and it wasn't just little wins. It was by, 15, 20 points, and it just showed, the toughness of the teammates and, and then me stepping in there, hopefully, boosted them a little bit. And, it was a team effort, and that's, how you win championships. Defense wins championships. I think, playing as a team wins championships.
14 points, 9 rebounds. Obviously, points and stats are great things. But how did you feel about the game that you played in this atmosphere, in this opportunity?
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously new, playing at Thomas More, where
somewhat new for you. Let's be honest.
You don't have the background, and
right.
This many fans and stuff like that. So, I mean, for playing in a new arena in a bigger arena than at Thomas More, I thought I played decent, but obviously I could hit a few more shots, and I feel like that's what everybody says. I could have played better. Whether they drop 14 or they drop 60, they. Yeah. So I could have done a little bit better, but a win's a win. So whether it's ugly or pretty.
Do you hearken in a game like this back to your D1 experience of being in an arena maybe this size, to having more fans? Are you able to help your teammates going, hey, some of this just ignore, some of this, understand, and here's how to get used to shooting lines? Does any of that come up this week or the past 2 weeks?
Yeah, Coach did a good job of getting us in different venues,
Okay.
Instead of practicing at Thomas More, day after day. And, he kind of told us, we came out here and sat and watched D2 schools, and he said, get your looking around the arena over with and then come out here ready to go. So he said, don't worry about the fans and stuff, just stay focused and worry about, stay in the moment and don't worry about the future or the past.
What was it about the game? What was the key moment, you think? Obviously, it came back on you late, or not late, really, about midway through the fourth quarter, really made it interesting. But what was the key moment that you guys realized, okay, this game is ours, or we're going to walk away with this win?
I think after the media, after the below the 5 minutes in the fourth quarter, I think we all, coming out of there, we all just looked at each other and, I think in our eyes, we could all tell that we need to get stops and,
sure.
Obviously score to win this game. And, we buckled down at the end and got the win.
Quickly look back at the 3 years you've been here. Obviously, it was an important move for you to come back to family and do something different. Looking back at 3 years, obviously 2 national championships, almost a third chance. But from you as a personal point of view, the decision and looking back on the last 3 years, what's it meant to you?
Yeah, I wouldn't change it for the world. And, playing with these group of girls and, getting close with Coach Hands and, him having my back and me having his back is one in a lifetime. Have a head coach like that, and playing with a group of girls that I did. They're awesome, and, they had my back as well. And, obviously my sophomore year I tore my knee, and then going back to back, undefeated seasons is, one in a lifetime, unless you're UConn.
You have come from a different point of view where you have been D1, you come to D3. We all talk about the D3 experience of what's it like to be D3, et cetera. From your point of view, having seen both sides, what is so important about being a Division III student athlete?
Obviously the free time.
You do get more of that, don't you?
During the summer, the coach tries to tell us, get in the gym as much as possible and, try to stay in shape a little bit. But, you have your summers off. It's not you control your own destiny.
Sure.
You don't have individual workouts. You don't have, weights that you have to go to as a team. You do all that. So just, you obviously have to put in what you want to get out. Yeah. And at Division I, you put in whether you want to, put in all that stuff or not. Yeah. No. So Division III, I think that you put in what you want to come out.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me.
Thank you.
As always, we give the guests the final word. Anything you want to say to Thomas More, the Division III community, whatever, as you walk off champion in your senior year?
You go Saints.
Very nice. She is Sydney Moss. When we come back, we'll talk to her head coach, Jeff Hans, right here. Hans. I keep saying Hans. It's Jeff Hans. You'll talk to him here on Hoopsville. Coming up next.
I'm a Division III student athlete, and I know how powerful words can be. The term gay doesn't mean stupid, lame, or less than.
So I pledge to speak up if I hear the term gay used in a derogatory way or any other homophobic terms.
If you can play in Division III.
I'm a Division III student athlete, and my teammates unconditionally accepted me as part of their family. So now I pledge to do the same for others. If you can play in Division III.
I know sports is important, but having the academic part along with it is a big plus.
I've discovered in myself, a newfound ability to overcome adversity at all different angles.
At a Division III school is really shaped around you developing yourself as a complete individual. The end result in my mind is you just become a very well-rounded person.
Before I came into college, I didn't really think I'd be able to balance so much. It helps a lot that you have a family with your team that can guide you.
With a D3 school, there's a lot of time for other opportunities. The coaches expect a lot of you during soccer, but after soccer, that's your own personal time to really find out who you are and other opportunities that you can pursue.
By balancing all of my interests, basketball, my leadership skills, and academics, I'm able to better prioritize my life and to manage it.
Welcome back to Hoopsville from Indianapolis, site of the Women's Championship, and I am now joined by Jeff Hands, head coach for Thomas More. First and foremost, congratulations, back-to-back champions.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
It was interesting sitting behind your bench for a game. I was looking forward to seeing your team in action. You got a unique experience being behind your bench. From your point of view, was this how this game was going to play out? Did you really think this was going to be deja vu to last year's semifinals, where it was low scoring and just to grind it out?
Oh, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
That's how Tufts is. They're well coached, great program, great players, and they defend you. Yeah. They don't make mistakes defensively.
Yeah.
And so they make it tough on you. And it's every shot is a battle, and then they execute on offense. And I thought we were able to make more plays, winning the rebounding battle the way we were able to tonight, and getting to the free throw line 24 times was very big for our team.
Interesting, kind of an ebb and flow to the game. You guys came out and looked a little nervous. Abby certainly didn't look like she was on her game, made a couple interesting decisions. Sydney seemed to want to do a little extra, and some of the other players didn't seem to fit their roles. Tufts gets up. They feel confident. Then you guys find a switch. You roll back on them. And then in the second half, it's the opposite. They come running back on you guys and made it tight. Was it hard to kind of control the game? Was it hard to control the emotions of the game?
Yeah, it was. Being on this stage, 6,400 people in the stands to watch, and that's a great atmosphere for our program, Tufts, and all Division III women's basketball. To be in this setting here in Indianapolis, it's just great. And so, we were nervous. We didn't look good. I knew it 2 minutes into it, but we got it settled down. I thought what really settled us down was when we had to go small because of some foul trouble.
Sure.
We were able to spread the floor, attack the rim a little bit more, get to the free throw line, and they had to make adjustments on what they were doing. And then the third quarter, they just kept playing. They kept coming at us, tied it up with about 6.5, I think, 6:50 left to go in the fourth. And then we were able to get on a run. And, it's a game of runs. They made theirs late third quarter because we were still up 8, I think, at the media timeout in the third quarter. And, they made it to cut it to 5. And then they kept it going to tie it beginning of the fourth. And then we made the last run.
Yeah, well, certainly an important run.
Yes, it was.
to get to that title. Interesting enough, you also you both had to kind of go to other players, both Tufts and yourselves. Were you surprised at the players that stepped up for Tufts? Did it throw you guys for a little bit of a run there, or really put you on your heels? Because during that run, it wasn't Baptiste, it wasn't necessarily Norris, it was other players.
Yeah, no, we expected that because the good ones are going to make good plays when they need to and in big games. And that's when they made shots. Wu coming off the bench and getting, I think, 8 points or something like that off the bench, and hitting some tough pull-up jumpers and getting some really good looks for them. And, that sparked them.
Yeah.
And we had the same thing, but we may not got the scoring off the bench.
Right.
But we got hustle plays, rebounds. So I thought that was a little different, but I thought they handled it well.
Interesting enough, you look at the season, and, last year you guys go undefeated, high expectations, but probably not. Can they go undefeated and can they win a national title? But certainly in the conversation. You win the national title, the expectations coming in this season is why can't they go undefeated and why can't they win a second championship? You got it done. So in many ways, you feel good about that. But how tough was that to have to deal with or experience the whole season?
It was hard, but we talked about not winning another one. We wanted to win. This is a different team, and it's a different year, and we wanted this team to win the first one and win their first one. And there's a lot of outside pressure, because those expectations are there. And you get people talking to you about when the semifinals are announced at Capitol, 2 hours away. When they figure out the championships in Indianapolis, 2 hours away, and they expect you to get back here. They want you to get back here because
they're hedging the bets.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And that pressure's there, but we never talked about it. And I thought they heard it all year long.
Sure.
They heard it.
Hard to ignore.
It is when you got in class with students and other athletes that are here supporting you tonight, and and family members and everybody that says get there, we're going to be there to support you. But I thought they handled it well because we tried to deflect it as much as possible. I know we're not going to deflect it all the way.
Right.
And it was a great experience here.
What was the secret to the season then? What was the ingredient in the sauce, as it were, that allowed you guys to pull this off?
Team, being a family, playing for each other, and I thought that's what got us going in the second quarter tonight, and I thought that's when it showed. And then again in the fourth quarter, when we were able to go on that 10-0 run, that we started sharing the basketball a little bit more. You know, we didn't have the number of assists that we normally have, and a lot of that's tough. And the way they play, like I said, defensively. But you know, when we needed to, we got some defensive stops. You know, I thought we showed tonight that we could be pretty good defensively as well, even though we weren't great all the time like they were. But we were good enough when it mattered to get a defensive rebound and a run out, or a steal and a push in transition to get an offensive rebound to get a second chance opportunity.
You talk about the team. Let's talk about the team. You know, this isn't about Sydney Moss, but we'll talk about her in a minute. But, you know, Abby Owings certainly is a firecracker for your team. She seems like the spark plug, really, in many ways. You had a lot of other players who contributed at different points in the game when Abby couldn't hit a shot or Sydney couldn't grab a rebound or something. You've had other players step up. Tell me about this team and why it's so good.
Kind of like what I said with the ingredient, it's just family. They want to play for each other. You know, that's why we built it that way. We want to lead the country in assist turnover ratio, and we want to lead them in numbers of assists per game, and do those types of things because it's fun that way.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you share the basketball and you get 4 people in double figures like we did tonight, and then you get people off the bench and getting hustle plays, defensive contributions, rebounds, diving on the floor, you know, trying to take a charge. It energizes everybody, and everybody feeds off of that.
Looking slightly ahead, but looking at this season, what you went through, the fact you're a team, the fact you went through the first 5 games without Sydney Moss, the fact that you could essentially win a game without Sydney. I mean, Sydney did have 14 points and 9 rebounds, but as you said, other players stepped up and had double-figure nights. How much has that almost given you an early transition to the future without the one everyone is keying on?
It's been big. Yeah. It has been big because playing those 5 games early gave them confidence. You know, made them do things that they may have not been comfortable doing in the past. Because you get somebody with Sydney's talent, she's a security blanket.
Right.
They look to her like at Amherst. We looked to her a little bit too much tonight and had some turnovers.
Yeah.
You know, so she's that security blanket that everybody goes to. Hey, Sid, go make a play, instead of them making a play. And so I thought tonight that showed when we needed a big shot. Madison Temple's 3 to put us up 7. That was big. You know, that was really big for us, and a lot of confidence, and it got the crowd back into it. I mean, we were on a little bit of a run. I mean, we scored 4 in a row, 4 points in a row, and
that 3,
they were right there. And then that kick out 3 right from the top of key and went down. You know, that was a big point in the game.
Sydney Moss, obviously, 3 years with you guys, 2 championships, almost a third. Unfortunate breaks to fall with the first run. What has she meant to you? What has she meant to the program to get you to where you guys are? Obviously, she was a key, but what has she meant on a more personal level?
She's like a daughter. You know, just the way she is, how smart she is, and the things. Her coming home and making a lot of sacrifices to play here, and you know, those type of things. It's tremendous. It shows who she is. You know, not only a great basketball player, but a great person on and off the court. Very humble, because she could try to go out and score 25, 30 every night if she wanted to. Take those shots. Now tonight she couldn't, because she couldn't make a shot. But that's why everybody else is around her.
Yeah.
You know, and she was that. Everybody's got those players. Those players that should be Division II or Division I.
Absolutely.
And you have to be here in this situation, or in the Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Fours. You have to. And a lot of other places have them as well. And so she just gives us a little bit more of an edge. And then having Nikki and Abby, Madison, and then Olivia Huber and the other 3 seniors, Sam and Alexa, playing the way they do, you know, just it makes everybody better.
Talk about the atmosphere. You mentioned 6,400 people. You know, this place was jammed. Even UConn showed up. I don't know if Syracuse was here or not, but we saw UConn show up and enjoy the game. Heck, the UConn band, you know, dressed in Tufts gear. I mean, they made it a great atmosphere. Yeah. What was it like to play in this atmosphere, though?
It was outstanding. I mean, just to be here, where they're playing the Division I championship tomorrow night, you know, and right behind the Division II championship, and have 6,400 people, and it got loud. You know, it got really loud when Tufts making their run, and then we make our run. You know, so that's experience these guys will take forever, and to be the first team, and Tufts to be the first team to have an opportunity to be on this stage in this setting.
Yeah.
It's perfect for both programs.
We haven't seen the D1 championship, but arguably of the other 4 games combined, this was the best game. The most well played, certainly the most competitive, certainly the most back and forth. Mm-hmm. What does it mean to put Division III basketball on this floor, in this spotlight? Obviously it's going to do nothing but help it, but from your point of view, what does this mean to do for this division?
Oh, it's huge for the division, because everybody looks at it and now says, hey, there's a lot of good basketball, because there's Division I coaches here, there's Division II coaches here watching, because they're here for the convention and to watch the other games. So for them to see us play, us and Tufts go at it and just battle like we did, I think it's big for everybody, and it'll only strengthen our game, and that's what it's about. It's about the players, the student athletes, and their experience.
Well, I appreciate you taking time to talk to us throughout the season, especially the last few weeks. I feel like I've talked to you almost every week, but I appreciate you taking the time. As always, we give the guests the final word. Any final thoughts you want to share with those tuning in?
Just thank you and Gordon for coming in here and getting into Indy and covering us and Tufts and everybody all year long, and all the time you guys put into Division III basketball, men and women, and helping these student athletes have a great experience.
Well, thank you for making it easy.
We're trying to. Thank you.
Here's Jeff Hands. I keep doing that. Hans Solo, Jeff Hands, something like that.
Maybe we'll get next year.
Yeah, maybe next year. I think we'll have him on a few times next year, too. Jeff Hands here on Hoopsville. When we come back, I'll get a different point of view from Justin Sweeney, and then we'll wrap it up when Gordon returns. Here on a special edition of Hoopsville from Indianapolis.
Celebrate the soggy shoes and the slow starts. Celebrate the lessons learned along the way. These are the wins. Not the shiny, nail-biting kind. These are the last a lifetime kind.
I used to never really talk. Ever. I was scared and shy. It was hard to look at people's faces. I was afraid if I said something wrong, everyone would laugh at me. But then I started to play golf with Special Olympics. I made friends and won lots of gold medals. But I learned more than just playing golf. Special Olympics helped me to find my voice. And now everyone else is speechless.
Welcome back to Hoopsville Special here from Indianapolis as we recap the Women's Championship. I am now joined by Justin Sweeney, who has seen his fair share of pretty good teams. He certainly saw George Fox on their runs to some good championships and even non-championships. He saw some good runs. He's obviously seen Thomas More as well. You got a chance to take this all in. What did you think of this run by Thomas More in the game in particular?
Well, I think we had the joy of seeing one of the greatest teams, obviously, in the history of Division III women's college basketball. And I think when it came down to it, you saw in about the final 6-7 minutes of this game, just the complexity and the depth that Thomas More has to offer. I thought Tufts came into this game tonight. Carla Berube, she had about a year and some change to stew about what she could do to formulate a better game plan against this Thomas More squad. It's kind of interesting in the end. I'm sure it's been dissected already that the margin and even the score, in fact, was almost nearly identical to last year's Final Four national semifinal game. But again, Tufts played their rear ends off in this game against Thomas More. But I think when it came down to it, even though they were very successful at times, numerous times in this game, in forcing Thomas More to rely on their third or fourth option, get uncomfortable, find ways to convert in different ways, you still saw that depth in the end for Thomas More. Now, it didn't necessarily occur on the offensive end. You didn't see that kind of showtime offense, a lot of the high-flying plays that we've become adept or accustomed to seeing Thomas More involved in through the course of the season. but they did it with defense, and you saw the depth with the defense. It wasn't just Sydney Moss, who we saw her versatility tonight, whether it was on the wing or getting down low in the block when her corresponding posts were in foul trouble, but Abby Owings coming up with a number of poignant fast break opportunities, and everybody else chipping in, not just Sydney Moss and Abby Owings. Maybe Carla Berube said it best when she said, I don't know if it was necessarily those two, but it might have been the role players that killed us tonight.
Well, it was. The role players stepped up. We saw that. Kiernan certainly had a great game. You saw that from some other players.
And she's come along so far in the span of a year. Like they said last year, maybe not necessarily timid, but kind of waiting for her right time to step up. Tonight when she got the ball in the post, she was focused. She did not waste time. She was efficient. She threw it in the hoop nearly every single time she got the ball in the block.
And even Tufts had to go to their role players because we didn't have some people step up like we thought we would. Baptiste didn't have a great game. It forced them into some other players, and we saw some great role opportunities out of players we are going to see in the future out of that tough squad as well.
And it's exciting, and I hope it kind of paints the blueprint for maybe another reunion, if you will, of these teams perhaps in the future. Yes, Thomas More, they're losing a lot of seniors. They're losing maybe, arguably, debatably, the greatest player in the history of women's basketball at this level, but still, the cupboard is quite full for Jeff Hands, and the same could be said for Carla Berube's Tough Jumbos.
Well, both teams, I think, showed that tonight. I think both teams showed the future of their programs on display here in this game. It was those players who put the games on their shoulders. It was those players who got the turnovers, the assists, the big shots, hit the free throws. It wasn't necessarily the Sydney Moss show. It was not necessarily the seniors of Tufts, not that we really expected it, but who were the factors in this game.
It was interesting, again, because I just keep hearkening back to the illustration of the depth of both of these teams. And I think in the end, Thomas More just had a little more depth. But as you delve deeper and deeper into the stats, the second chance points, not the second chance points, but rather the bench points, it's really glaring in favor of Tufts. Again, a lot of the veterans that came off the bench carried them to the final junctures of this game before Thomas More kind of reached that inevitable point of this game where everyone was kind of expecting, maybe it was delayed, but eventually they took over and kind of overpowered Tufts over the final 6 minutes.
We've mentioned it a few times on the show already, but we saw ebbs and flows. I mean, this started off as the Tufts game because they came out and kind of went after Thomas More and played him hard and was driving the lane, getting some shots, and Thomas Moore's kind of sitting back on their heels. Then Thomas More said, whoa, enough of this, and Abby Owings.
More Thomas More.
Yeah, and Abby Owings changed gears. I mean, come on, talk about the last shot of the half. She's bringing the ball up the court as slowly as possible. I'm sitting there going, she's going to get a 10-second violation, crosses a timeline, and about a second later changes gears and is gone with a scoop shot layup. I mean, it was little moments like that that really were the testament of this game.
And there's a lot of different elements to this game that determine the outcome, but I asked you guys and Gordon, who was sitting next to me, and a couple of the other characters along press row here, true or false, was Abby Owings the best player in this game tonight? And you know, I think
outside of the opening couple of minutes.
Yeah, it was a really glaring impact she had, particularly in the second half of this ball game. Of course, she wasn't on her own. You saw the depth of this team. Sydney Moss did her thing. Nikki Kiernan was magical inside, but Abby Owings, I thought, really decided as the point guard, as one of the key leaders of this team. The ball is in my hands, and I need to, as you said, you know, push the ante and shift up into turbo.
She was good. Hey, atmosphere-wise, you've been to quite a few championship opportunities. You love the NBA, so you're in buildings like this often. What did you think of the atmosphere for this one?
I had high hopes. I've heard nothing but great things about Bankers Life Fieldhouse. It's a very presentable arena on television. A lot of the people I've talked to who have come to Bankers Life Fieldhouse have said it is a state-of-the-art arena, and it certainly did not disappoint for us this week. And what I really like about it is just the way it's constructed. It's cavernous. Every seat in this arena is steep, but at the same time, it's not a bad seat. Everybody feels like they're tucked into the game, and it's weird how it both doubles as an NBA arena, but it still possesses that collegial feel. Sure, and when we saw these roughly, I don't know, 600 to 900 Thomas More fans, the student section and the rest of the families pouring in here, and then an almost equivalent Tough Jumbos representation on the other end, all chiming back and forth. You really had the feel of a Division III basketball game, and possibly even more. And we got to feel that last night, and my hat's off not only to everybody who partook in hosting this tournament this week, but everybody who traveled far and wide to really make this event hum every single day throughout. And I'm sure maybe with some of the semifinal teams flying home, particularly from the West Coast after last night's results, I think we're still going to have a great turnout for tonight's game, and Indianapolis is still bouncing and popping.
Yeah, by the way, we're going to let the cat out out of the bag a little bit here. Justin has been a little bit on cloud nine most of the weekend because, A, you got to see the guy you called get to the championship at George Fox Scott Rueck play at Oregon State. So for you, it was kind of nostalgic in that factor. Then we sat behind Anchorage, Alaska Anchorage's team in the D2 game, harkening back to your roots. And of course, in the D3 game, you know these teams darn well, and you're a D3 guy.
I feel a little personally spoiled.
I'm saying you kind of got the most out of this experience, did you not?
It was great. It was a magical weekend. I was anticipating a magical weekend. Not only were the games pretty good and compelling, but I had a lot of time, many chances to catch up with some old friends like Coach Rueck. Met up with Marvin, Mary Lou, his parents, who actually dating back to that wonderful journey back in 2009 when I initially met them, and have kept up with him and his family throughout the years, and got a quick photo op with BB Gardner, now Brianna Ware.
Yeah.
She came up from Tulsa, Oklahoma this weekend. She was the starting point guard for that George Fox national championship team back in 2009. So it wasn't only just a great spectacle of basketball, but I think it was almost sort of even additionally somewhat like a family gathering, and got to see you and Larry and Gordon and the rest of the gang as well.
Once again. It's
been such a long time since Vegas.
I know, it's been forever. At least it does feel pretty forever. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to join me as always to give the coach, because it's normally a coach, the guest, the final word. Any final thoughts you want to share with those tuning in?
I think the spectacle has been outstanding, and a lot of the conversation around women's basketball, its evolution, the next direction it's headed in, and I think it's in a very good place right now at all three levels. I know it's discussed with Gordon that it's becoming deeper at every single level. More girls are growing up invested in the game of basketball. You come out here this weekend and watch just a generational talent in Brianna Stewart, and then even then at our level in Sydney Moss. A lot of these role models to look up to and try to emulate and model, and I just think this sport is catching amazing momentum, and it was really nice to be a part of one of the poignant and latest moments in the growth of this sport this weekend here at Bankers Life Fieldhouse, and what an event it was.
Well, thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining us for the weekend. Appreciate that weekend. It isn't really a weekend, but
it's not, but it is.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. When we come back, Gordon rejoins me. We talk about the atmosphere once again. We also talk a little bit about the season that was and the season that will be when we come back with a special edition of Hoopsville from the Indianapolis Division 3, 2, and 1 championship weekend.
Division 3 allows you to be able to give yourself to other things. Not even just participate in them, but really get involved with them if you want to.
There's a lot of interaction. It's not just sitting back, taking notes. You're actually doing hands-on things and better preparing yourself for your major.
Choosing a Division III school, I've had the opportunity to develop my leadership skills and to be more involved on campus.
Division III in athletics, affords students the opportunity not only to participate in intercollegiate athletics at a competitive level, but also gives them the opportunity to, engage in the other interests in their campus and in their lives outside of that sport and outside of the academics on the campus.
And to have opportunity to have time to join clubs and being able to play basketball, it allows you to just be able to do everything you want to do. I wouldn't change it for the world.
For the love of the game. But for those of us who are Division III student athletes, it's more than that, a lot more.
Sure, the game is important, but as we work so hard to build both mind and body, it's more about team.
That is why NCAA Division III teamed up with Special Olympics, and in giving the gift of sport to those for whom it seemed an impossible dream, we are working to make this a better world.
Help us keep that dream alive.
You can make a difference.
And welcome back to a special edition of Hoopsville. I am Dave McHugh. We're joined by Gordon Mann as we wrap up things here from Indianapolis. And the one thing I certainly wanted to get your take on, we were in Atlanta. We saw the atmosphere that was so great for the Division III and Division II students in that occasion. Of course, in that occasion, Division I played under 75,000.
Right.
Division II, Division III went to an arena like this, slightly smaller, and played their game. Here we're seeing it all in one place, so it's got a little bit of a different feel. But all in all, the atmosphere for Division III was outstanding.
Yeah, I mean, can't possibly be duplicated in Division III. I'm trying to kind of create a mental scenario. If you somehow had Calvin and Hope play each other at DeVos or Van Noord, you'd have the arena, you'd have the crowd. I'm talking about in a national championship game, not in a regular season game. You might get close.
Well, you still have to bring in the scoreboard and do the pomp and circumstance, the lighting and the DJ, not the DJ, but the musical background, everything that the Pacers organization does
every third day.
Into that mix. They're doing it all season. So it's certainly different. And I sense that the student athletes really not embellished it, but really enjoyed it, really soaked it in, and really took advantage of it.
They enjoyed it. The folks here did a really nice job. And I don't know whether this was true with the men. It may have been, and we just didn't hear it, or I didn't hear it. They did a good job tying the three levels together. They did an event called the Salute, where they took folks to the Indy 500.
But they went to the Indianapolis Speedway.
The 8 teams, so the four Division 1, the 2 D2s, and the 2 D3s. The players have all talked about. They felt fantastic here. I think they thoroughly enjoyed the experience. Thomas More will get to come out and stand out here, I guess, for the national anthem.
I think are both teams hold the flag. Yeah.
So that'll be exciting for them. It's a great atmosphere. I think this is a great building for basketball. Obviously, that's what it was built for. But it's a great building for a national championship. Being in the Georgia Dome felt a little weird.
I don't think that would have worked.
Yeah, well, obviously for women, that for the women's crowd.
D3 men's either.
I don't know that it wouldn't have worked for D3 men, and I'm not entirely sure it worked for D1 men either.
That's probably a fair argument.
But I thought the atmosphere here was spectacular, and they had to wait 2 weeks to play the championship game instead of playing it in less than 24 hours. That created some scheduling issues or some stretching out the season. What an experience.
A couple funny notes. First off, the Speedway, they got to take their actual buses that they traveled in and do a lap. Sidney Moss talked about wanting to
trying to get the bus driver to go
faster. I'm pretty sure he was like, oh, heck no. We're going fast enough. And they were probably still speeding along pretty well. They talked about meeting the D1 players and getting pictures. Somebody told me, who's the UConn player?
Brianna Stewart.
Brianna Stewart apparently had 2 or 3 abreast of her, and her hands were pretty much reaching all the way around everybody. The D1 students, we had UConn at the game for D3. A couple other notes. Obviously, the opening, the starting lineups, the lights down, and all of that. Getting to take that in, and then getting to take in the D1 games.
They did some nice things in game. They had the power pack or whatever they were called, the halftime folks. But they did some video that I think was probably just seen in house, where they asked the kids a bunch of questions, some of which were very funny. Show us your best dance move. How would you survive the zombie apocalypse? Things like that. And you could see. I thought Coach Hands actually handled it really well. I don't know whether it was intentional or just kind of serendipitous, but whenever they would do one of those, he would stay out of the huddle. The players would sort of sheepishly all watch what was on the scoreboard because they were the ones that were up there, and they had kind of funny graphics with him. And then once that went over, he would step into the huddle and say, "Okay, here's what we want to do." That was different because the D2 kids, you could see that the coach was trying to talk to them through it. You could see the players out of the tops of their eyelids trying to see what funny thing their teammates had said. So just another special touch that made things so nice here.
I felt bad for the Thomas More band. I don't know if they knew they were going to go up against the UConn band.
Yeah.
Who dressed in the Tufts blues.
Yeah.
And learned the fight. It was a great moment. Don't get me wrong, and there was a lot of fun. But the Thomas More band went, oh, come on.
Yeah. But and in terms of the teams who made it here, I'm sure Wartburg and Amherst and lots of other teams would debate this point, but you sort of had almost the perfect 2 teams to play in this. The only one that would have been better is if, Capital or something like that. Because you had Thomas More, who is 2 hours away. Coach Hand said in the postgame, this was a closer game for us than any road game we've had this year. Because remember, they're in the President's Athletic Conference, and they got to drive 6 hours to their closest, or whatever it is, to their closest drive, and it's only 2 hours here. And because of Tufts, you had the UConn factor.
Yeah.
So, cool picture with Jen Rosati and Rebecca Lobo, who are all-time greats in college basketball, wearing Tufts sweatshirts.
Yeah.
You had Oriema, who was here for a while.
I saw him, but he was not wearing anything Tufts.
No, it was not. So, but it was kind of the right 2 teams. They were able to get the tie-in, and the fact that we got to see, Coach Ruick at Oregon State sort of tied the whole weekend together. So
serendipitous. Certainly didn't script it that way, but it was nice.
Looking back at the season, everyone kind of hoped and expected Thomas More to get here, win another national championship, so they at least lived up to that. Yeah. But your take on how the rest of the season kind of played out?
You know, we went down the stretch. We had a bunch of undefeated teams. We had George Fox that was undefeated. We had Scranton that was undefeated. We had Bluffton that was undefeated for a long time. I thought it was a nice mix. I thought you had I thought the NESCAC frankly acquitted itself pretty well. That hasn't always been the case at the Final Four, but they were clearly the best two teams, whether you take Tufts 1 and Amherst 2 or the other way around. They were the best two teams that played Thomas More. They were the only ones of many that they played that were, kind of tournament caliber who played them competitively, frankly. I thought Thomas More obviously had a spectacular season. I thought Texas Tyler really acquitted itself well. I thought Wartburg really acquitted itself well.
Wartburg, yeah.
Thomas More will be the headline, and they should. Tufts will be, third or fourth paragraph down. But whenever the top 25 poll comes out, you're going to see Texas Tyler higher than they've ever been. You're going to see Wartburg higher than they've ever been. Stevens had a real nice season, and it's not quite Division III football where you really have to remind yourself I have to look beyond Mount Union and whoever they happen to play in the championship for those other levels of stories. But as you look down, down the levels, Albright had a special season, a season they've never had before. Wartburg deeper in the tournament than they've ever been before. The other thing about the season is a lot of the top players come back, and that's not the case every year. Now, it's true. The top player, Sydney Moss.
You're going to have a tough decision now.
Yeah, Gordon. Moss will act to the joy of the other 400-something programs. She's done now. But Lisa Murphy, who had a great year at Carnegie Mellon, I talked to a number of people, and they said that she was probably the best player not named Sydney Moss in Division III women's basketball. She's back. Caitlin Langer, who's the West Region Player of the Year, she's back. Michaela North, who's the Northeast Region of the Player of the Year, she's back. Owings is back for 2 more years. Amherst brings everybody back. Tufts brings almost everybody back. Wartburg brings almost everybody back. Scranton brings almost everybody back. So, I thought it was a year where you saw, Thomas More clearly much head and shoulders, but you saw the emergence of some other teams that give you reason to believe, okay, this is not just a one and done. This is not just, a team gets to the Final Four and next year they're third in their conference. Yep. I think, so for the teams that were in it and didn't get all the way this far, I think there's a lot to hope for. I think if you're one of those third or fourth place teams and you want to make the step up, it'll be easier in the President's Athletic Conference, but not a lot. I mean, the team we saw tonight goes 18-0 in the conference again next year. But in some of those other tightly contested conferences, it's wide open. The Capital, the NJAC, the WIAC, the NESCAC, all of those, I would expect you're going to see a lot of those same teams again. Yeah, Christopher Newport brings everybody back. It's another one of those.
Marymount's going to be good.
Going to bring all their young kids. Texas Tyler brings most of their team back. So, those programs that were on the cusp this year of getting to the Final Four, I don't know how many of them would have been competitive with Thomas More, but they'll all be. Thomas More will come back to the pack a little bit now. Yeah. That happens when you lose the greatest Division III player, certainly of her generation, if not of all time. But a lot of those other programs have a lot to look forward to, and that's without knowing who's a freshman, who's a transfer, who will return from injury, all that other stuff.
Interesting enough, we talk in Division III men's basketball about the parity and how much it is just wide open nowadays. Yeah. Even though if the top teams are still there's a lot more teams who are competing with them. I'm starting to see the depth in Division III women, and there's one thing I will not forget about this season. It was a quote from Nancy Fay at the beginning. Yeah. I said, you haven't won a championship in a while. It's a little bit more competitive than it used to. Why? She goes, a lot of more young girls like to play basketball. Right. We're seeing that now in Division III basketball.
Yeah. You see a higher level of, particularly, you just look at the floor tonight. Tufts started 3 sophomores, Baptista Dillon and Josie Lee, I believe, were all sophomores. You could make an argument that certainly the best player in the game in number 2A were both sophomores for Thomas More, Kiernan and Abby Owings. Some of that, frankly, is the fact that when you and I get to see these teams, we're seeing the creme de la creme. We're seeing the top. We're seeing programs that have now been successful for a long time. So they're going to get a different kind of freshman than 8th place team and than the 8th place team in the UMAC does.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're a little bit of that is, but I think you definitely have seen, unlike Division III football, unlike Division I women's basketball, you've seen some of these. It's not just, well, other programs need to get better, whatever that means. You can actually measure it in terms of some turnover at the top, in terms of close games in the national championships, and not just in terms of kind of moral victories, which some of those other sports have.
You write a great article. I don't want to take the thunder of that article away, but you write about Sydney Moss, arguably maybe the best player that's ever played in Division III, and there's certainly been some great players. Rhonda Jo Miller is, when I got into it, was certainly a player that came to mind. But just give me a little bit of a sense of what the article kind of touches on.
Yeah, so last year I spent way too many words talking about Sydney Moss's season because it was really one of a kind. Definitely a Division III, and I didn't check Division I, but maybe all of college basketball. She was a consensus player of the year for us and for the WBCA. She was the tournament's most outstanding player, which she was again this year. She was the nation's leading scorer. That was the unusual one because a lot of times the scoring champion plays for a team who doesn't get to the tournament, and they're playing in a conference where they may be the best player on their team in a conference that isn't, really going to send anybody deep. And she was the lead of an undefeated national championship team.
And I think she broke the scoring record for an NCAA tournament.
She did, she did all of that, and did that all in the span of one season. While, and we learned this yesterday, playing on an injured knee. She actually had a torn cartilage in her knee for the last 8 games.
And recovering from a blown
ACL.
From the previous season.
Right, so she did all of that, and I thought, that was a spectacular season. So it gave me a way to go back and talk to Coach Fay about Alia Fisher and Tasha Rogers, and had a lot of fun talking to Deanna Klingman, who was the first superstar in an undefeated team, at Scranton in the early 80s. There are a lot of players from the Deemers from Buena Vista and Lori Trow from St. Thomas, people that you and I were in middle school or elementary school.
Didn't know what
long before our time. But I wrote the piece on Sydney, which was probably up at the same time that this show is.
Probably is.
Because of something that Amherst head coach G.P. Gramacki said. He was talking to one of the couple of parents in the lobby, and they were sort of, congratulations, coach, good season. And he said, well, she being Moss had 39 points tonight. She may be the greatest player at this level ever. Somebody should write about that. So,
hint.
So I did. And Moss, would Moss be better than Alia Fisher, who's sort of the next one up in terms of decorations? 4 national championships, 3 of them undefeated. There was one year where they didn't do a most valuable player, but if first team all tournament and most valuable player,
probably would have gotten it anyway.
Yeah, the other players who have been really outstanding through the Division III, for the D3 hoops era, so to speak, if we want to brand it that way. Chelsea Schweers at Christopher Newport, Allison Coleman, who's now the coach at Sage, but at Eastern Connecticut. Moss is the best I've seen. She is the most diverse in terms of, we saw it tonight.
Skill set,
She played point guard on some positions. She played power forward and center on some positions. She could kill you a number of different ways. She was a special athlete. And I actually had a chance to ask Coach Hands about that in the post game. And I said, tell me a little bit about, now Sydney's career is done. You get to write the last sentence in the Hall of Fame article or whatever it is you want to describe to it. He said, what would you say about her? And he said she was a winner. And then he started to choke up, which is not something you see from Thomas More. It's a very loose team. They like to have a lot of fun. They've described themselves as goofy. She's a special player, special talent level, all freshmen at the SEC, but really she's ours. She's Division III. I know she started at the D1 level. I know who her dad is. She's ours. She's going to graduate. She fit seamlessly into her team. She had her grandmother there at a lot of the games, including tonight.
And she was thrilled to be here.
Yeah, she was our treasure for 3 years, as kind of over the top as that sounds a little bit, and it was, and she was fun to talk to, which certainly never hurts.
She really was.
So
as we heard earlier today.
Yeah, a lot of great athletes. It was fun to watch Sydney for 3 years.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you taking the time.
Sure.
Awesome atmosphere, as we said. They are cleaning up around here, so we should probably get the hint and clean up ourselves. Hoopsville is done for this season. It has been a memorable season, culminating here in Indianapolis. It certainly was fun, and we keep adding on more and more. He and I are in trouble because we're going to be adding on more and more to our shoulders, but we are certainly looking forward to the future. With that note, we'll sign off. We will tell you that we'll do a couple special Hoopsvilles throughout the off-season just to cover bases that are taking place, any news that may be appropriate, but tune in next year as we get back and going in mid-November with more Hoopsville. For Gordon Mann, for Justin Sweeney, thanks to Sydney Moss, Jeff Hands, of course, the SID, and others here, not only at Thomas More, but everybody here in Indianapolis for their help. We thank them. Thank you for tuning in to another season of Hoopsville. Honey, I am coming home. Hey, kids, I'll be home soon. And we'll see you back here for the 2016-17 season before you know it. For the WBCA, thank you for their help. The NABC as well, D3Hoops.com. I am Dave McHugh. Thank you for watching Hoopsville for this season. We'll see you back next year.